They found almost nothing. 100 years of excavation, Egypt, the Sinai Desert, ancient Canaan, searching for the 2 million people the Bible says walked out of Egypt in a single night. Almost nothing. And what that silence contains will change how you read every word of this story. No campsites, no graves, no pottery, no refuse pits, no trace, in one of the most heavily excavated regions on Earth, of 2 million people spending 40 years in the desert. Now, before you close this video, I need you to stay with me, because what the silence actually contains is more extraordinary than the absence. And what it means for faith is something the church has rarely discussed honestly. Egypt in 1250 BCE was the most bureaucratic civilization the world had ever produced. Its capital, Pi-Ramesses, built in part by forced labor, stretched over 4 square miles. The Nile Delta was crowded. Merchants from Canaan, soldiers, tax collectors, foremen shouting quotas, and scribes. Everywhere, scribes. Egypt wrote everything down. Tax records, military rosters, border crossing logs, the names of foreign laborers, the price of grain in every region for every season, how many bricks each work gang produced per day. If a foreign population of 2 million had lived in Egypt for 400 years, if they had built its cities, if they had fled in a single night and the army sent to retrieve them drowned in the sea, someone would have written it down. Let me tell you the story the way the Bible tells it, because it is one of the greatest stories ever committed to writing. Exodus opens in darkness. A new Pharaoh who does not remember Joseph, a people enslaved, a decree to murder every Hebrew newborn boy. One woman refuses. She sets her infant son in a basket of reeds and floats him down the Nile. The Pharaoh's own daughter finds him, names him Moses, raises him as her own. Moses grows up in the palace. He wears Egyptian linen. He eats from the Pharaoh's table. He is by every outward measure Egyptian, until the day he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Something breaks open in him. He kills the Egyptian. He flees. 40 years later, an old man tending sheep in the desert, a bush catches fire and does not burn. And a voice says, "Go back, free my people." What follows is a confrontation between the God of a slave people and the most powerful king on earth. 10 plagues, each one a direct attack on an Egyptian deity. The Nile turned to blood, striking the god Hapi. Darkness over the land, striking Ra, the sun god. The death of every firstborn son, striking Pharaoh himself, who was considered divine. Pharaoh breaks. 600,000 men plus women and children walk out of Egypt in a single night. The sea splits. The army drowns. For thousands of years, no one questioned it. Then the archaeologists arrived. Israel Finkelstein is not a provocateur. He is one of the most respected archaeologists in the Middle East, professor at Tel Aviv University. Decades in the field, he did not set out to disprove the Exodus. He followed the evidence. Finding 1. The Sinai Peninsula has been excavated at dozens of sites. Egyptian military garrisons, Bronze Age settlements, nomadic campsites from different periods. But for the period of the Exodus, the 13th century BCE, archaeologists found something specific. Nothing. Not a single campsite. Not a single grave. Not a single piece of pottery. Not one refuse pit. Not one fire pit. Nothing to indicate that a large population moved through this region. Archaeologists have found evidence of nomadic populations of 10,000 people, 20,000, even larger. The traces they leave are identifiable and recoverable. 2 million people in the Sinai for 40 years would leave traces impossible to miss. Finding 2. The city of Pi-Ramesses, which the Bible names as one of the cities the Israelites built as slaves, is real. Archaeologists found the brickworks. They found evidence of Semitic workers, people from Canaan and the Levant working in Egypt. But the Egyptian records, the ones that documented everything else, described these workers in small numbers, dozens, occasionally hundreds. And when the question is, where is the record of 2 million Hebrews? The Egyptian archives are not damaged, not missing, not destroyed. They are silent. The most meticulous record keepers in the ancient world, who tracked the number of bricks made per day per work gang, did not record the departure of 2 million slaves, or the drowning of their army, or the 10 catastrophic plagues. Finding 3. After the Exodus, the Bible describes the Israelites conquering Canaan, city by city, battle by battle. Jericho. A. Hazor. Archaeologists excavated all of them. Jericho, the city whose walls famously fell when Joshua's priests blew their trumpets. The excavation at Jericho shows the city was essentially abandoned during the period of the conquest. There were no walls to fall, because the city was not occupied. Ai, described as a great city destroyed in battle in Joshua 8. Ai shows no evidence of occupation during the conquest period at all. And the broader pattern that emerges from the archaeology, the pattern that changed everything for scholars, is this. The Israelites, according to the archaeological record, did not come from Egypt. They appear to have already been in Canaan, indigenous people, largely indistinguishable in their early material culture from the Canaanites around them. So, if the Exodus didn't happen as written, no great departure, no 40 years in the desert, no falling walls, what do we do with a faith that was built on this story? Here is what I want you to hold alongside the archaeology. In the antebellum American South, in the cotton fields and the slave quarters, enslaved people sang Exodus songs. Let my people go. They had never read Finkelstein. They had never heard of the Sinai excavations. They could not access academic debates about ancient Near Eastern archaeology. But they knew with a certainty that no dig and no discovery could give or take away that a God who freed Hebrew slaves could free them too. Nelson Mandela quoted the Exodus. Martin Luther King quoted the Exodus. Liberation movements on every continent in the 20th century reached for this story when they needed to believe that oppression was not permanent. What kind of story does that? Karen Armstrong, one of the most respected historians of religion alive, argues that the power of the Exodus was never primarily about historical precision. It was about theological truth, that there is a God who sees people when no one else does, who hears people when no one else listens, who can move entire empires on behalf of one person crying out in the dark. Finkelstein himself, the archaeologist whose work most directly challenges the literal Exodus, says this: the Israelite people were real. Their memory of bondage was real, possibly rooted in actual historical experiences of smaller groups who were enslaved in Egypt and escaped. That memory became the story of all of Israel, a collective memory that carried more truth than any single historical event could hold. That is not an insult to the Bible. That is how the most powerful stories in human history actually work. They take real human experience, real suffering, real liberation, real hope, and they make it bigger than any one person or any one people. They make it universal. Here is where I will leave you. Finkelstein does not say the Exodus is a lie. He says, the story as written, 2 million people, 40 years, falling walls, does not match what is in the ground. But the story itself, the claim that history can be interrupted, that the arc bends, that suffering does not get the final word, that claim has been tested by 3,000 years of human history, and it has held. Whether the Exodus happened exactly as written in the desert of Sinai in 1250 BCE, or whether it happens every time a person who has run out of options discovers that they are not as alone as they thought, that is for you to decide. I'll ask you one question, and I genuinely want to know your answer. Does a story need to be literally true to be spiritually true? Drop it below. I read every single one.